Hello again, everyone, and thank you for joining us Happy New Year, and thanks for joining us for the first edition of Alaska Weather for 2020. And I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Hazardous weather graphics showing the yellow areas here signifying, in some cases, wind chill advisories, like say for the Kobuk Valley and in toward the Noatak Valley here in areas of the Brooks Range, on down into the Central Seward Peninsula. That's for wind chills of 50 degrees below zero with the gusty winds. And then winter weather advisory here for the Galena area tonight into tomorrow. Winter weather advisories over here also for the Upper Yukon Valley, southeastern Brooks Range, Arctic Village for blowing snow, reducing visibilities to a half mile or less at times in those areas. And in the red shaded zones, that's in the case of the Northwest Coast and the Seward Peninsula, the Bering Strait coast to St. Lawrence Island. That's a blizzard warning, and that's for out until, well, through tonight for these areas, possibly into early tomorrow. And Kivalina currently 3 p.m. Saturday, or 3 p.m. Wednesday afternoon today, gusts, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts out of the northeast there, and even stronger winds through the Bering Strait, Tin City. Let's see, they were seeing winds gusting to upwards of 70, 75 miles per hour there, with Cape Romanzoff down in the Yukon Delta, 78-mile-an-hour wind gusts there. And there's a blizzard warning out for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. For the Yukon Delta this evening or in through tonight, and then the Kuskokwim Delta winter storm warning is out until 7 p.m. this evening, including Nunivak Island. And blowing snow and those strong winds, about 40, 50 miles an hour here across the deltas. Again, 55 miles an hour for Cape Romanzoff. And then those gusts near 80 there at the Bering Strait areas, and about 55 for Teller, and about around 50 miles per hour or so for St. Lawrence Island. And then there's a winter storm or a blizzard warning out for the on the Kenai, or actually along Kachemak Bay for about another hour here, with winds gusting 40 miles an hour, creating some whiteout conditions there, where about 4 inches of snow fell. By contrast, not the wind, but the Alyeska Girdwood area saw about 18, or let's see, what was it, 12 to 18 inches of snow with the snowfall we got over the last 24 hours. And then the blizzard warning until 7 p.m. this evening for the Alaska Peninsula. Pilot Point this afternoon, seeing winds 55 miles an hour in gusts, temperature 5 degrees above zero. It gets a little better as you head down the peninsula into the upper teens, say Cold Bay and Falls Pass there, with winds not so strong, gusting, barely reaching 40 miles an hour, but still St. Paul seeing gusts to about 50 miles an hour out in the north. And satellite imagery showing kind of a band of clouds here gradually shifting inland, associated with a trough, good strong west-southwest flow. Cold air, actually Arctic air, coming down out of the Arctic here from the Russian Far East. You can see it continues to dive southward and then takes a turn to the southeast here, the farther south it gets, then takes a turn to the east across the Alaska Peninsula, Gulf of Alaska, southern Gulf of Alaska, right into the Panhandle. All cold air here on up into the Northwest Territories. And that's pretty much eliminated the freezing levels, knocking it down to 2,000 feet, I believe, down toward Vancouver Island. And so, as you'll see here coming up, there won't be too much on the freezing level chart. And you can see the cloud shield associated with the cirrus shield associated with the next front, trying to push into the western Aleutians there later tonight and tomorrow, but it's not really much of a significant frontal boundary there. Just kind of a, by comparison, weak, and won't see the kind of weather we've seen with this low pulling up, or actually upper level, cold upper polar low here at Bristol Bay, slowly heading eastward. And on the chart again, southeast flow here, so place in the Copper River Basin, Gulkana, popped up around 30 degrees today, otherwise below zero back over the southwest interior on up the west side. And on the chart, really just precipitation all in the form of snow right down to sea level, the exception being portions of the Panhandle here and Juneau changing over to snow, and Haines as well, and even the southern area, Sitka, seeing some good snow showers this afternoon. Temperatures right around freezing, a little above. Same thing with Prince of Wales Island, where they saw anywhere from 3 to 5/10 water equivalent precipitation, which would translate into 2 to 4 inches of wet snow or so, with the temperatures near or just above freezing there. And Yakutat picked up about 4 inches of snow, give or take. And for the Cordova area, snow 6 inches in the last 12 hours, most of that falling late last night, early this morning, with lightning up amounts this afternoon. So most of that 6 inches fell late last night. And then the gusty winds causing the blizzard warning out. Homer visibility is down to a quarter mile or less, with winds 25 gusts 40 miles an hour. And that's slowly starting to improve currently, with that warning ending at 4 p.m. And winds gusting 40, 50 miles an hour there, Kodiak Island out of the west-northwest. So that kept it dry, say Kodiak State Airport on the east side of the island there, and AKwx saw gusts of 55 miles per hour. And the snow showers and strong winds, cold temperatures here, as I mentioned, down into about 5 degrees above zero at Pilot Point. And Ahkun Island still seeing gusts around 50 miles an hour, but they're a lot less at Unalaska. And conditions really improve as you head west here. Just some isolated snow showers, much lighter winds in toward Adak and Atka. Then the gradient tightens up again out here to the west, where this front lying in about this position tonight, or will move to about this position tonight. So look for the winds to increase there and chances of precipitation a little bit. But generally, not a lot of change here over the eastern Bering Sea, with a high locked in over the Russian Far East. Still a very tight gradient here, and the blizzard warnings continue for the northwest coast and right through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, and the Yukon Delta, improving, as you can see here, over the Kuskokwim Delta tonight, with possible clearing area there from Kuskokwim Bay and toward Bethel. Sleet muted in Kuskokwim Valley. Look for some gradually clearing skies. Also up in the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, snow showers will persist here over the Kenai Peninsula and Cook Inlet. Winds will come down for Kodiak Island, continue to decrease, as well as all along the Kamishak Bay, Augustine Island, currently seeing those 50, 60 mile an hour wind gusts out of the west there. That's going to come down considerably, and kind of mostly snowfall levels down to sea level here for the Panhandle. Some areas could still see mixed with rain, kind of a southerly flow. And that would, usually the lowest elevations would be kind of a heavy wet snow if it continued to fall as in the form of snow. Anyway, moving on, for tomorrow you can see this front, really not much associated with it at all. Maybe small craft advisory level winds, possibly gale in a narrow band there, but less wind and less snow showers, but definitely less wind here over the eastern Bering Sea, Pribilofs, even the northwest coast, although you can see enough of a gradient there. It stays pretty gusty, but nothing like what you saw today. And that same holds true for the Alaska Peninsula, southeast Bering into Bristol Bay. Some snow showers improving here, south central Alaska, with snow showers lingering mostly in the early morning hours and then diminishing gradually through the day. And the southeast coast is that next system passing by to the south, the jet far enough to the south that it should cross the Queen Charlotte Islands with the heaviest wind, moisture, icing, turbulence, the whole thing there. Some of that could slip up into the southern panhandle, definitely by Friday. Probably some mixed precipitation there, some warmer air nudges northward, but the warm front will stay to the south, as well as the heaviest precipitation and winds along with it. Otherwise, the northern panhandle, cold and dry with pretty gusty outflow winds there from the northeast. Same thing from the North Gulf Coast. Could see 60 mile an hour wind gusts out of the Copper River Delta. Pretty brisk there for Prince William Sound. Lighter winds over the interior, getting windy again for the Brooks Range. And the northwest coast stays windy. Less wind, but still cold enough for snow down to sea level here for the southeast Bering Sea. And that front kind of hanging up continues to really weaken out here over the western Aleutian, southwest Bering Sea. Lows for tonight, generally below zero, most inland areas to a little above here south of the Alaska Range. Otherwise 15 to 25 below on up to the Arctic coast, and mid-teens for the Pribilofs, mid to upper 20s for the Aleutians, and 0 to 15 for the Alaska Peninsula. 20s, lower 30s for the Panhandle, followed by highs tomorrow. Upper 20s to mid 30s there for the southeast coast. Below zero north and west of the Alaska Range, even Bristol Bay. and lower 20s Alaska Peninsula. Lows the following morning. Below zero into the Sitna Valley now, Willow and Trapper Creek, 15 to 20 below Copper River Basin, and 15 to 30 below in the interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic here for Thursday morning. Let me back up one, bounce. There we go. Thursday morning, IFR North Slope, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and then a narrow band of VFR just south of the Berks Range, back into the IFR there. I'll say around Eagle and southern Yukon Flats, down with marginal VFR to about the White Mountains. And then pretty good here over southern Alaska, lingering marginal VFR at least to start. Cook Inlet, western Alaska Range, band IFR North Gulf Coast, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, and a large area IFR out here over the eastern Bering Sea, right up to the into the Yukon Delta and part of the Seward Peninsula, Pribilofs, and continuing with that northwest flow along and north of the Alaska Peninsula, but improving for the eastern Aleutians and VFR farther out to the west. And now for the afternoon, looking VFR for the southeast coast up into the Copper River Basin. Some of the Tanana Valley, probably Fairbanks, Delta, Alaska Range VFR tomorrow into Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, Manuscus to Sitna Valley. Some IFR hanging around Kodiak Island, and then a narrower band of IFR here from the Selawik Valley, Kotzebue area across the Seward Peninsula, and Savunga on down across the Pribilofs, the Fox Islands, and say Cold Bay, False Pass, King Cove, in those areas. A breakout here, Adak and Atka looking really good tomorrow afternoon, and then a system bringing some more IFR into the far western Aleutians. And that doesn't make much headway here Friday morning. Kind of slips eastward a little bit, not really a strong system at all. Marginal VFR with some areas of IFR for the Bering Sea, mostly just marginal for the Aleutians. And still some IFR lingering around Shelikof Strait and southwest side of Kodiak Island. VFR southern Alaska, marginal and IFR up to the north. And some marginal VFR over the southern half of the Panhandle. And then for the afternoon, that burns off, and your VFR there for all the southeast coast, southern Alaska here. Much of interior Alaska, actually, just some marginal VFR and possible IFR in this funny shaped area there from the Yukon Flats or southern Yukon Valley, White Mountains on up into the North Slope, but not too bad, western Arctic coast. Marginal VFR Bering Strait right along the coastline here across the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak looks kind of marginal, Fognak Island kind of VFR-ish. Pribilofs marginal, and then that weakening frontal boundary tries to push some IFR into Adak. For passes Anatuvik, IFR improving to marginal tomorrow, same trend for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR to start, VFR to end the day Thursday, and same trend for Rainy, marginal becoming VFR, and windy, except Rainy maybe a little sooner, and for windy VFR. Isabel, marginal to VFR, and then back to just plain VFR from Antasta, and VFR for Tanita as well. And Portage, VFR to start later tonight and tomorrow, and then becoming marginal as some moisture slips up from the southeast there into especially western Prince William Sound. So the eastern entrance has the best chance of going marginal, although the entire pass probably will as well. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR improving to marginal VFR. Freezing levels, not a lot to see here. Surface south of the mainland, south of the Aleutians, till you get out to Amchitka and Kiska, then it just slides a little bit to the north there. But up along the coast of the southeast coast here, and then 2,000 feet on down to the south near Vancouver Island, icing. Bulk of this moisture, this would be the best chance of seeing any icing. Looks like it's going to slip by to the south of the Panhandle. Some of that could spill up across Dixon Entrance there, possibly, but the bulk will still stay to the south. Could be a little bit of icing threat for Kodiak Island, Fox Island, Pribilofs, and some areas of above about 4,000 feet of the rime, maybe light mixed, but it's going to be light up there over the northern interior and kind of dissipating throughout the day. And for the jet stream here, ridging pretty strong over the Russian Far East. Northerly jet, cold air continues to come southward from the Arctic into the Bering Sea, diving way down to the south. 160 knot jet cutting across mostly the Queen Charlotte, so I'll keep that moisture with that next system mostly to your south. 9,000 feet, couple of lows, more prominent one there west of Kodiak, a weaker one up over the southeast interior. And winds northwest, but lighter now, 25 to 35 knots there, coming around that in the Bering Sea up to 40 knots over St. Lawrence Island, lighter out to the west, and about the same at 3,000. Moderate chop, Alaska Peninsula, up here in the northern interior, northwest coast, and the western Aleutians.
So my heart is definitely racing. I don't know about anyone else's. This is the stuff nerds dream of.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6,
It's gonna
5,
happen.
4, 3, 2.
That countdown you just heard? We'll get back to that in a minute. Last episode, we saw the epic launch of ICESat-2, NASA's newest state-of-the-art ice-observing satellite. But now that that's in orbit, the pressure to deliver results is on.
Between launch and, the first ground returns, took 17, 18 days or something like this. It's a time when you're quite nervous.
9 years ago, Dr. Torsten Marcus took over as the lead project scientist for ICESat-2 during a time when the mission needed a champion.
You start fighting for a mission over, for 9 years now.
So when ICESat-2 was turned on for the first time 18 days after it was launched, only then would the science team know if the whole thing had worked. And it did.
First of all, it's kind of emotional, right? Being here, ICESat-2 was developing for 9-10 years. Project scientist, you live the mission, right?
If it sounds like there's a lot of noise in the background, that's because Torsten is being interviewed from a plane 1,500 feet in the air. IceBridge was tasked with the job of bridging the data between the end of ICESat's mission and the beginning of ICESat-2, about a 9-year difference.
The goal is that it would run until ICESat-2 launched and then would have overlap with ICESat-2 as well, so we can get a really long, well-calibrated time series from IceBridge.
As the deputy project scientist for Operation IceBridge, Brooke works closely with Torsten to make sure the two missions are syncing up.
The timing was everything during that mission, which was a real challenge because not only do we need to...
Basically what you need to take away is getting an airplane and a satellite in space to fly over the same flight path at the same time and collect matching data is really, really hard. IceBridge was tasked with two objectives: check the accuracy of ICESat-2's data over land ice and over sea ice. They were able to lock in the land ice data fairly quickly in the mission, but the sea ice data...
It was really tricky. We waited day after day. Do we fly the sea ice? It's still on our list.
7, 6,
It's gonna
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark on the overpass 0435, 35 Zulu.
Here's what just happened. A plane 1,500 feet up and a satellite 308 miles up measured the same sea ice at the same time. This moment finally linked veteran mission Operation IceBridge's data to that of its new sister mission, ICESat-2. Two projects that, until now, were separate for nearly 10 years.
It's a very satisfying feeling because you do something that is meaningful and in the bigger picture. And yeah, it's very satisfying.
Our search for knowledge doesn't end here. Grace Follow-On and ICESat-2, the two satellite missions that launched this year, will continue to bring in incredible data for the foreseeable future. The steady drumbeat of campaigns in the field goes on, but most of all, the people who look for answers will never stop searching. And from our perspective, it's pretty clear why. What is your favorite planet in the solar system?
My favorite planet is the planet Earth.
What? Earth? Really?
The Earth, obviously.
Favorite planet in the solar system? Earth, right? We live on it. It's a really important one.
Favorite planet is Earth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Why?
when you look out at the other planets, they're absolutely fascinating. They've got all sorts of interesting systems going on. They've got dust storms. But then when you're on another planet, looking back at Earth, I mean, it's just incredible.
Whenever you go in different places, it looks so different, so amazing. It's just, I love planet Earth. It's just a very special planet. This is our home.
We've seen things far beyond the solar system. But even with all that, even the amazing things we've seen, one of the most amazing is the Earth itself.
It's got to be Earth. It's got to be Earth.
It's got to be here. I like the polar regions up here of Earth. Yeah, sorry. It's very boring.
Earth is good.
Earth is good.
We live here, it sustains our life.
I'm not going to turn my back on it.
It's got water, it's got ice, it's got vegetation. I mean, it's rich with life. And so studying Earth is a very, very rewarding career. And I think if we were on any other planet, we would be trying to get to Earth as quickly as we could.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the today's sea ice analysis, of course, those strong northerly winds and very cold temperatures, so sea ice continuing to expand southward out here, starting to look like a normal winter sea ice coverage out in the Bering Sea here, and that should continue for the next couple of days. And for the coastal water forecast here, Prince of Wales Island along the coast there, east winds 20 knots. Otherwise, south winds become southeast as you go up the coastline there, and eventually drop off to about 15 knots, but those seas still at 17 feet on the north coast there. Lynn Canal, southeast 15, seas 3 feet. Same thing for Stevens Passage. Clarence Strait, light winds, south at 10 knots, 7-foot seas. And we'll bring it up to about 15 knots there on Friday, but seas drop off to about 3 feet, and Passage Canal, Stevens Passage, east winds 25 knots, small craft advisories there, and gale force winds out of the north for Lynn Canal. Again, that tightening gradient, Arctic air spilling in via gravity flow, so sustained gale force northerlies there. Lighter out along the coast though, north to northeast 15 to 20 knots on the north coast, and north 15 to 20 knots on the south coast. And for the Prince William Sound zone, marine zone, south 25 knots, that's good for small craft advisories, and southwest 20 to 30 knots for the North Gulf Coast, strongest over toward Middleton Island, where the seas will be about 14 feet, and southwest 20 for the Barren Islands, northwest 15, a lot lighter than today here for Kamishak Bay as well as Kachemak Bay, northeast 20, southern Cook Inlet, north 15, north of the Forelands. And then for Friday, increasing the winds again, northern Cook Inlet, northeast 20, but we've got 40 knots, sustained northeasterly winds in the forecast, so gales flying for the southern Cook Inlet area all the way down across Kachemak Bay, 45 knots there out of the northeast. Barren Islands, northeast, 35 knots. North Gulf Coast, east, 25 to 30 knots, 7 to 11-foot seas. Prince William Sound, north at 20. And Kodiak Island, Pacific side here, southeast 20 knots, seas up to 10 feet. Shelikof Strait, a lot lighter winds than today there with sustained 20-knot winds out of the northeast. And then Castle Cape to Sitkinak, east or west 25 knots, heading toward the east there, and 9-foot seas, and north to northwest winds across the peninsula at 30 knots, something lighter than today in Bristol Bay north of 20. Those will kick up to about 30 knots on Friday there for Bristol Bay, all the way down to Cape Sarachev on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Pacific side, from Cape Sarachev up to AKwx, Kodiak there, Sitkinak, Trinity Islands, take your pick. Northwest 30 knots, seas 7 to 8 feet. Southwest 20 knots on the Pacific side of Kodiak Island and Fognak Island. Shelikof Strait northeast at 40, seas 11 feet. Western Aleutians, east winds coming up to 40 knots maybe there with that front. Didn't look that impressive, but it's possible in a narrow band in advance of the frontal boundary. Otherwise, 20-knot winds out of the northeast. Small craft advisories for the AKwx area, north to northwest 25, and northwest 35 knots for both Unmac and Unalaska Islands tomorrow. And for Friday, Unmac Island, northwest or west-northwest at 20, and small craft advisories over Unalaska Island, northwest 25. Atakaнаtka, lighter winds starting to lay down, 15 to 20 out of the northwest, turn east 20 toward Amchitka, and southwest 25 there for the western Aleutians. And St. Lawrence Island, north 40 knots tomorrow, gales all the way down along the Yukon Delta coast. Small craft advisories here south of Nunivak Island, and 40-knot northerlies all the way down to the Pribilofs and a little beyond. And the outlook for Friday, north 30 knots, so lighter winds all areas. St. Lawrence Island, north 30, 20 knots, Yukon Delta coast. Small craft advisories there along the Kuskokwim Delta coast, north 20 for the Pribilofs and northeast 30 for the northern Bering Sea, and 20 knots out of the northeast for Norton Sound. Eastern Wolford Sea coast tomorrow, northeast at 15, north 15 here on the central coast. Edge it up to about 20 knots there by the time you get to Point Lay. And that continues to increase with brisk wind advisories Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, and gale warnings from Cape Thompson to Wales, north 35 knots. Those will fall back under gale force under the threshold there, down to 30 knots, turning northeast on up to Cape Beaufort, and then northeast 15 for the remainder of the coast. And for tonight, that wind or the blizzard warning continues here in the shaded area, where the tide disk gradient is, and that's along the northwest coast, St. Lawrence Island coast. Winter weather advisories here back northern upper Yukon Valley to the Brooks Range area, and the blizzard warning ends for the Kenai Peninsula.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.